All right, it's 3:40 right now, and just last week, Surgeon General came out with a suggestion about a warning to social media. Atiba, do you find yourself sometimes you can't get off of it, and then or you put your phone down and it's like it's calling your name? Social media is calling your name, or is it the phone calling your name? Is it the app?
Absolutely. Once you start going down that rabbit hole of reels and you just keep flipping up and you go on to the next one, it's hard to get out of it. So,
the Surgeon General on this one is saying the mental health crisis among young people is at an emergency, and social media has emerged as an important contributor. So joining us on the live line right now, just to talk a little bit more about this, is Mike Bonamarte with Levin and Perconti, a law firm right here in the city of Chicago. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about the work, first of all, that you've been doing to hold and different ways that you've been going after social media companies legally to try to hold them accountable for some of the harm that they cause to children and some young adults.
So let me the work that I've been doing just recently, as well as my partner Steve Levin, has really just been talking about it. Right now I'm not actually representing anybody, but I'm following some litigation that's pending in California. And, it's one of these weird intersections where, I'm talking about it because I'm afforded a platform as a trial attorney, but I'm also heavily interested in what's going on because I'm the father of a 9-year-old daughter.
Sure.
And frankly, it's terrifying what's happening. And I think that the Surgeon General's warning, along with his advisory opinion, should serve hopefully as a wake-up call to these companies who are trying to use the law to shield themselves from liability. They're using Section 230 to claim that they're immune from these types of actions. And frankly, I'd like to see some change in legislation, and I think a lot of it stems from parents sort of feeling helpless or alone in their fight against these types of companies, and it's really, really scary, to be honest. And I guess one thought that came into my mind is, as I was thinking about the issue, is how many parents have actually thought or heard another parent say, "Boy, I can't wait until my child's old enough to be on social media." I suspect that
never have you heard that one, huh?
Not many of our listeners have ever heard someone say that. And that's, not to suggest that there aren't positives that come from social media, but the susceptibility of adolescents, young people, teens, who we all know you've got enough to deal with. When you're 13, 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, you're in high school, you have the pressures that go along with, your body's changing, your mind is evolving, and to have, be the victim of cyberbullying and in the extremes, sexual exploitation. People are trying to sell drugs. I mean, the nothing really surprises people when you hear about it anymore. And honestly, we have to start thinking of this as a product.
Let me ask you this, attorney. This is Atiba.
Sure. Sure.
I wanted to ask you, let's evaluate the precedent a little bit, because we've seen these type of warning labels go on with alcohol. We've seen it happen with cigarettes, and we've seen it happen with music. Right? We remember when there were advisory labels added to music, I think in the mid to late 80s, right?
Yep.
And so what impact do these advisory labels have? Because the one thing that I think is different about this particular instance, there is inherently nothing good about smoking a cigarette. There is inherently nothing good about drinking alcohol. You can make a case about the benefits of internet and social media. I think social media in and of itself can be used for good and it can be used for bad.
Sure.
So when you factor that in, just talk about again the precedent of the effectiveness of adding these labels.
Well, I think the best example might come from some statistics that I've read about cigarette smoking, before And I'm not suggesting it's just the warning label, but before the warning labels were put on, I think it was something like 40% of people were smoking, and this goes back to the 60s and 70s. I think that number has decreased drastically, and I think it does have a little bit to do with more information on the detrimental effects of cigarette smoking, but also I think the warning label is impactful. And it's also the context. It gives the parents sort of a platform to have the discussion with their kids. It's not just me trying to control you guys. It even says when you sign up, and it identifies some of the warnings, and I think it makes that conversation, or would make that conversation, a little bit easier on the parents. But make no mistake, it's not going to eliminate the problem entirely, and I think there needs to be better legislation. I think a positive is that it is an issue that I think transcends political affiliation.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lawsuit that's been filed by 45 states and the attorney generals of 45 states, including Illinois, against these companies. And, it's one step. And I think that's what the Surgeon General is trying to do. In addition to keeping a spotlight on the issue, talking about the problem, he certainly has a platform. I think his article was poignant and eloquent in how he sort of discussed the problem, both from his position or point of view as the U.S. Surgeon General, but also as the father of 4 adolescent kids.
Let me ask you this, attorney, because I remember there were other things, like you said, this is a first step, and both with alcohol and certainly with smoking. We've had the Don't Drink and Drive campaigns, right? Drink responsibly. Sure. There's always been an undercurrent of some type of social movement, sometimes sponsored by the government, about that particular issue. Do you think that's something that needs to happen here beyond the labeling? Do we need to get some type of movement beyond this so that people can absorb the impact of what's happening to our young people?
Yeah, I do. I think it would be huge, and what I would really like, I think the ultimate goal is for these big companies, Meta, Instagram, Facebook, to take ownership. I'm not suggesting that they developed these platforms and had evil intentions, but we know enough that they are aware of the problem now. So I'd like to hear more from them, that not that they're immune, but that they can do things to address the problem. I mean, we're talking about some of the brightest minds in the world with potentially unlimited financial resources. And if they can create these algorithms that are designed to hook you, that you were talking about right at the beginning when I came on the air, I won't accept that there aren't people there that are smart enough to figure out ways to regulate the content, regulate the amount of usage, and try to prevent the problem from happening in the future. And, one of the senators, I believe it was actually a Republican senator, said that, the trial lawyers might have to get involved. And that has happened in other consumer-based products, including cigarette smoke, including cigarettes, including opioids. I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, it is holding these companies financially accountable that is what actually brings about change.
This is going to go a long way. This is like music to a lot of parents' ears, because I'm sure, Mike, they are sick and tired of having that argument with their kids about putting down their phones. We're going to continue the conversation about this social media warning, and how, if the Surgeon General is able to do something, and then lawyers like you are able to do something about this could cut down on the amount of time that our children spend on social media. 3:48, you're listening to the afternoon show with Atiba and Darlene. We'll be right back. We want to hear from you as well. 773-591-1690. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the afternoon show here at WVON. Atiba, a true king, standing up for the kings and to celebrate Black Music Month. I'm Darlene Hill. Got to share some breaking news with you guys before we go any further with our attorney friend on the line right now, talking about social media warning. Former Chicago Alderman Ed Burke sentenced in the federal corruption case. Alderman Burke was a alderman for 54 years here in the city of Chicago. Well, just a couple of hours ago, he was found and he was sentenced to prison and hit with a hefty fine. Guilty on 13 counts of corruption just last year. He is going to be paying a $2 million fine, and he's going to be spending 2 years behind bars. We're going to talk more about that on the other side of the break on the 4 o'clock hour.
Absolutely. We are back on Afternoons with Buchanan and Hill. We're joined on the live line by, I think I got this right, Attorney Mike Bonamarte. Excellent.
Hi.
Attorney, thank you so much for joining us.
Levin Perconti.
This has been a riveting conversation. So I think you were leading us right to what I wanted to ask. And that's simply this. Is it time to file a lawsuit? And I say that because, we saw the the tobacco industry deal with several lawsuits, hefty, huge lawsuits. And that seems to be the only kind of language that multi-billion-dollar corporations understand. That you control out all of the cancer victims, the people that have died, the cancer survivors, and the tobacco industry couldn't care less. It was only up until they figured out that there's going to be some real liability for this
when they start speaking green.
Exactly. So is that where we are? Is that where we need to be?
I think, we're sort of there in that there's multi-district litigation pending in California, but I think, unfortunately, that is where we need to be, and it's, we see it in different arenas. I mean, I represent people in cases of medical malpractice, birth injuries, things like that, and sometimes it's the trial lawyers in these lawsuits that go the longest way in improving patient care, and I think we might be headed towards that here. It's sad because the problem's has existed for a long time, and and similarly, I've seen this in the medical malpractice cases I've handled. There's also might be racial disparities here. I mean, I read a study today from the Pew Research Center, and in that study, while all different races reported online harassment as being and bullying being a major problem, the black teens and the Hispanic teens that were interviewed and gave answers, 70% of the black teens said that cyberbullying and online harassment was a major problem. So you can imagine there's not just the traditional type of bullying that we see all the time, but there's racial discrimination, religious discrimination, and I think that's where we're going. And I really think that change has to happen on a federal level. We're seeing different states do things. California is considering now. They came out with something last week. Governor Newsom said that he's going to be proposing a ban on cell phone use in schools. And, we just have to continue to talk about the issue. And I'm not representing anybody right now. I would like nothing more than to not get a call from someone in my community because it means something tragic has happened, but I think it's important for consumers and parents to know that there are trial lawyers that are willing to stand up to this problem.
But, Mike, how is it that because you can sue your doctor, you can sue corporations, you can sue companies. How is it that these social media companies cannot be sued, though?
So there's right now there's a federal law that I think there's been some talk about reforming both at these congressional hearings that happened earlier in the year, and I know it's also part of what the Surgeon General is talking about it, but there is immunity from civil liabilities for information service providers. And there may need to be some reform to that act. I think that what the lawsuit that is pending in California is trying to say is that they are not necessarily suing because they failed to protect from harmful content. They're suing because these companies have created tools, and you guys were alluding to this before I came on the air, that basically it's creating sort of an endless cycle. They're causing teens and adolescents to become addicted to their product. And you've all probably seen it. You go on social media, you start seeing ads, and then you click on the ads, and those are basically, when you're doing that, they're collecting data, and it's making it easier and easier for them to make people addicted, especially people whose brains are developing and are more susceptible or more vulnerable
Mike, I
to
gotta
these
tell you,
things.
I gotta catch myself sometimes.
Sure.
Because I will spend time
We
on
all
on
do.
Instagram looking up stuff. It's not just these, you talked about your 9-year-old daughter or these young adults. We
Sure.
get sucked in, and then when we start looking for something, we try to go shopping for something. It's like, hey, Big Brother is watching. They're giving me more ideas.
Right, and
me
each
more
time you
apps.
click on one of those ads,
Right.
they get data about you.
Absolutely.
And that's what creates that cycle.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
go ahead.
I was just going to say we're up on a break right now. We got to let you go, but thank you so much for spending some time with us here at WVON. We're talking to Mike Bonamarte with Levin and Perconti. I said that right?
You did, and I wanted just to thank you guys for having me on and your interest in this topic. I think it's important that we keep spotlighting the issue and keep talking about
Absolutely. You have
Thank
our
you, sir.
number now, Mike. Come on back when you got an update, okay?
it. I would love to.
All right,
Thank you.
good deal. Thank you. Have a good week.